82% of new podcasters and guests make this one big mistake. I'm Shawn Kunkler, the host of the Realtor 180 podcast, which is a national platform where I sit down with agents across the nation and talk about what they're doing to succeed on a massive level. What's really interesting is up to date, I've sat down with 70 different guests. And within that, unfortunately, I've had to scrap 8 full episodes, and that totals about 8 hours of my time and their time, not counting post-production's time of trying to clean up the audio, visual, and editing components of it. So my hope for this is to help steer you around some of those issues and challenges so you can get out of the gate better. The biggest mistake I find when people are choosing gear is they try to just cut corners and go for cheap. Cheap usually will cost you something on the back end. Now, if you are a discount broker or a discount service provider in some capacity, you do want your market to message match. And so what that means is going with a lower quality gear is going to match essentially what you're aligned with and what you're pitching, which is a better match for your audience. However, if you're in the luxury sector and you're pitching a more luxury service, or you're trying to pitch yourself in that position, then you want the quality of the content that you're putting out there to be more in alignment with the expectations of your potential buyers, whoever they may be. And so with that, you want to strategically choose how you're going to go about approaching your brand, who your client avatar is, and what gear and equipment you're going to need to help facilitate that. So I know that's a lot of more complex stuff we can get into in future videos, but at minimum, I'm going to help you get started with some of the things to avoid right out of the gate. And so with that, we know that podcasts are primarily consumed in people's cars while they're driving and when they're more specifically doing that alone. So with that, if there's any weird audio glitches, humming, buzzing, maybe popping of certain words on the mic, that is going to be amplified by 10. I know from my own personal experience, anytime that I've heard these audio glitches, especially for an extended duration of time, regardless of how amazing the content is, what they're teaching or sharing or educating me on, I'm going to click off. And so the spirit of behind what I'm sharing you is to how to make your content more sticky. How do we actually keep the listener engaged and listening and hanging on to every word that you're saying for a longer duration, which, as we know, everybody's attention spans is what we're fighting to keep. So anyways, with that, I'm going to run down to the studio and break down some of the gear that I use to help you get started. All right, I'm in the studio now. I'm going to give you a breakdown of some of the products I'm actually using. So I'll preface this with I'm not doing a review. I'll give you some tips and tricks, but I'm not going to break down each of the products. To kind of give you context of how I approach things is I tend to nerd out, and really I always want to find the best product for whatever it is I'm needing it for. And so I always do a bunch of research. I'll read all the different reviews, pros and cons, and then weigh them all up and then figure out what the best product for me is. My other maybe not best approach is I tend to approach things with the buy once, cry once, meaning I will buy the really good thing that's expensive and regret spending that much money, but then I'm ultimately happy because I don't have to replace it, versus the other camp of buy the really cheap thing, you're not happy with it, or it breaks, and then you have to buy it again, and then it breaks again, and then you buy it again, and then you wind up landing on that really expensive thing that you should have just bought the first time. But with that, in spending a little bit more upfront on having high quality gear, I did buy it for my business. And so all of these, working with my accountant, were a tax write-off. I will also preface it with, I paid for these with my own blood, sweat, and tears. None of these products were given to me from any of the companies. And so I have no dog in the fight to give them a good commentary or bad or anything in between. So let's dive into it. If you're doing a podcast, if you're a guest on a podcast, the first and foremost important part is the voice audio quality, because most people, again, they're going to be sitting in their car. And so it's your voice is literally the only thing that's going to carry through. So we'll start with the mic first. So the one that I have in front of me is the Sure MV7. MV7, and it's the USB mic setup. This one runs about 250. It on Amazon has well over 6,000 five-star reviews. It comes highly recommended. If you have a favorite podcast that you've been watching and you zoom in, 9 times out of 10, this is the mic that they're using. It tends to be just the industry standard for the best of the best product. Again, get it. These are the more expensive path. If you go to the description below, I have more budget-friendly options that are still really high quality, good stuff, but they're just a little bit more budget-friendly. And again, if creating content is something you're going to be doing long-term, then maybe you should consider what gear you're going to need. And the next piece of it is if you were going to take your podcast and break it down into more digestible social media pieces like YouTube Shorts or Reels, you're going to need some of the visual components. And so that's where having a good camera setup is really going to help. This is the Logitech Brio 4K webcam. It's amazing. It does have a built-in mic and speakers. I don't use those. I optimized everything with buying external accessories to really optimize those pieces. So I don't use those too much. I would say the only negative about using such a high quality camera is if I have a guest on who's using, let's say, a computer webcam, and we're cutting between me talking and them talking, you will clearly see a discrepancy in quality from cut to cut. And so it's not a negative about this camera, it's just a negative about the comparison because it's just such incredibly high quality. This one runs about $170 on Amazon. This one by far has the most reviews. It has over 17,000 4.75 star reviews. So it not only has a lot of reviews, obviously a lot of purchases, but it's very highly favorable. So the next product on the list is when you're recording, and this is more specific to if it's conversational podcast or something where you have a host or a co-host, things like that, and there's another person. What I have found, if the sound is just being piped in ambiently into the room, or if you're just sitting across from them not being in your ear, you may have a tendency to talk over them. And on a podcast, that gets amplified if somebody's listening to it. So having a really good headset allows you to when somebody's in your ear, you can tell precisely when they're done talking and it's time for you to begin, and you have less chance of stepping over them. The other thing it does is it just enhances the experience because it's such high quality of having their voice in their ear. This is the Sennheiser HD 280 Pro. Again, if you look at most podcasters and you zoom into what headset, if they're using a headset, it's probably this one. This one is going to run in the neighborhood of $95. It has on Amazon 11,000 4.5 star reviews. Again, it's a really good product, really solid reviews. So this is the one. This is all the gear I'm personally using on the podcast. I've used other stuff, but this is the stuff I've landed on and I liked the absolute most. And then last, to go back to kind of the social piece, or if you're putting the long form online, or if you have other visual components that are going with it, you do want to optimize what the camera is picking up. The way to do that is with enhanced lighting. This is the newer 2-pack dimmable setup. It actually comes with 2 identical lights and stands, plugs, like everything you need right straight out of the box to basically plug and play. What I like about this one is depending upon the time of day that you're recording or the color of the light that you need, you can either make the light more cool or you can adjust it to be more warm depending upon what your needs are in order to balance the lighting in the room and kind of take away some of those shadows. That's, again, if you're raising the bar and you have really solid, crisp audio, then you want to have the visual component basically brought to that same level. So there is a level of concurrency. That being said, if again you go to the description below, I do have budget-friendly options, and then I do have all of these products, which again, they're a little bit on the higher scale. And then additionally, I have all of the ancillary purchases that you're going to need. For example, like this mic stand, you're going to need a way to kind of hold it in place. As well, you're going to need a few plugs and then a system to plug everything into, especially if you're using a Mac and you only have two ports, you're going to have to figure out how to consolidate down to basically one outlet. And so again, there's extra gear there. If you're using totally different gear, that's awesome. And if you enjoy it, let me know in the comments below. Just go ahead and jot down what you're using. I'm super curious of what other people are using to optimize their video production.